I wanted to talk to you a little bit about brand reinvention. Number one, it's my last name, very coincidentally. So I'll try not to talk about myself or show pictures of the kids that I don't have or my pets that I don't have. But I'll talk about some of the experiences that I've had with some really, I'm one of the luckiest people. I've had some great experiences with some really iconic brands. The brand I'm not going to talk about today is the Old Navy brand, which is really where I started my retail career. And it was a very new brand, so it was not really about brand reinvention. They're doing that now, but when I was there, right out of the gate, their motto was known around the world. And then they promptly went from 0 to 1 billion in 4 years. I think they still hold the record. So somehow from a brand invention statement perspective, they made that happen for themselves, which was phenomenal. But I'm going to start out with Starbucks. Okay. When I got to Starbucks, we were stamping it out. You know, there were all these jokes on TV about how they open across from each other, and you don't remember which one you're in. And it was very, very, very courageous of us at the time when the world was imploding, to sort of do a lot of self-reflection. The retail world was imploding, to do a lot of self-reflection to say, this doesn't feel right. Even though the stores were really profitable and we were still doing really well, that it didn't feel right, it didn't feel like us. So we started the work from the inside. A lot of people getting locked in a room for a couple of days to say, who do we want to be when we grow up? We didn't hire a bunch of outside companies. We didn't bring in a branding firm. We didn't bring in outside design firms. We really started from the inside out. And we obviously went all the way back to the roots. It starts with the coffee. You guys probably heard the story about Howard pulling all the breakfast sandwiches out of the store because it doesn't smell like coffee anymore, and we're about coffee. And then we realized we're really about more than just coffee. We're about this iconic personality of who we are. And coffee wasn't just coffee way back when. It's the whole romance of the history of coffee. It used to be a currency. And part of what the brand would allude to is sort of how the coffee would get to you and how to bring that story into the stores. These are some older pictures. I know they've kind of transformed since then, but really sort of going back to the roots of what the company was about, which was this sort of global expression in a very localized way. And the idea of handcrafted, obviously. Bringing each individual cup to the customer and telling the story about it, and actually using that in the graphic expression as well of the brand. I like doing presentations because I have so many pictures. I don't actually have any charts, so I can just flip through them. I have 300 pictures to show you, so it makes it a little easier. But anyway, so Starbucks is it's a luxury brand. That was the expression that we actually had to make for ourselves as well. It is a choice that people make, and it's a luxury. It's a little treat for yourself, and we have to respect it in that way. And we have to storytell about the fact that you are making this choice to have a very luxurious cup of coffee. And so the heart of all of that is being the heart of the local neighborhood. That was a statement that Howard Schultz felt very strongly about. So how do you do that from a mass customized way, right? Because you still have to keep your efficiency around opening thousands and thousands and thousands of locations. And then how do you filter that localization to say, is it truly us or not? And this is why it's really important to start from the inside out, because there's not going to be a checklist that works, right? Is it authentic? Is it artistic? Is it all, so then you hand that out to all your designers, and then you go, check these boxes. That's really, really difficult to do. So you have to start with a bunch of internal calibration. And so when we started this work, I will say, we literally said, all bets are off. What you guys were doing before, stamping out these identical branded stores, you now have to design the heart of the local neighborhood. I will say that right out of the gate, it wasn't all that great. There were some things where, I'm looking at Kambiz because he was one of my partners in crime there. So there were some things where we were like, ooh, gosh, that didn't turn out so well. But you have to do that. You have to go through that. It can't be perfect. It is an evolution. So from the idea of actually rebranding or reintroducing ourselves as the heart of the local neighborhood to when we really felt like we were getting steam was about 1.5 years. We did end up bringing in people after we sort of solidified the ideas to help us socialize it from a company perspective. Okay, so this was one of the first ones that we did. This is on the corner of Pike's Place Market. And this one represented a style that we called our heritage style. This style is actually harkening back to Pike's Place Market, and we call the success of this actual design is what we always used to tell ourselves is when you open the door, it has to feel like it's been there for 100 years. And it was a painstaking creation. And the reason why we knew we were successful is the tourists would come and they would take pictures in front of that one because they thought that was the one that was the original store, which is not. And this one is a Starbucks in Madrid. So how do you celebrate the gift of the building that you're in versus actually try to make it about your brand? It's about you and the building and the customer together, and the translation of that expression. So inherently, how do you actually have all this variety and still make it feel like a Starbucks? And like I said, in the beginning, it was a little rough going, but after a while, the designers got it, and they started to actually run with it. And there was so much pride in what they were doing. And we talked about sustainability earlier, that there was no such thing as a green program. The design program, the development program is the green program. And so all the designers got LEED certified, one at a time. The company paid for it. And it started to become just a way of living, not necessarily you do your job and then you layer on the sustainability goal on top of that. So these are just images from the Soho store. And so the other concept that we came up with was called the artisan concept, and that one was more bringing the actual authenticity of the building into your design versus the other one was more about the heritage of the coffee house. And so this was one that we did in Paris Disney. The tower was actually created from wine barrels because in Paris and in France, it's about wine and coffee. And really sort of adding that texture. This one is in San Francisco. So, and then the third one was regional modern. So this is kind of your California modern expression. So the true measure of the success for us, when we were there, the Starbucks isn't, they don't do a lot of advertising. The building is their advertising. And so what the press says, and then later on what the customers say are really what actually brings this forward. So the courage to actually have differentiation out there, not have to think about whether or not this is scalable. It's okay if you run out of this chair or this wood, and really sort of have it be sort of this lab experiment that you can trigger at any one point in time because of an idea that you had and be able to have the courage to test it. So at the end of the day, when you're talking about sustainability, local relevance and sustainability go very, very much hand in hand. And so the idea of actually using sustainable wood that's locally sourced. So I don't know if you can see it, but it says the table behind you is made from standing deadwood. And then this is just some of the quotes from some of the customers. Once again, not prompted. I love this slide because it's not necessarily the most amazing design, but it does actually give you a little bit of the attitude that was going on. We found a local supplier that could actually take the milk jugs from a local Starbucks, take it away, and bring it back as legs for the table. And so they're not maybe the most beautiful table legs, but the fact that it was a closed loop recycling was, really what was fascinating to us. And then we added the storytelling. Not in a very overt way, just in a funny little free the milk jugs kind of way. And obviously you could not execute this at a global scale because it's just one store and one manufacturer in Atlanta. But that's okay. And so the funny thing about when you're a brand that has thousands and thousands and thousands of stores, you know that most of what you do is remodels, right? Especially in the US. And there's nothing more wasteful than tearing out all your old stuff and replacing it with something that's completely new, or tearing down a building and rebuilding something. So how do you sort of refresh and reinvent and bring that storytelling in a space that was already existing was part of the creativity that the design team really enjoyed. So these are just some before and afters. This one was in Wake Forest. Oddly enough, they put a Starbucks in the library and it made people go to the library more, which was a great story. So, so as you guys know, that's what Starbucks is executing today and what took the leadership a long time to sort of get to is really sort of bringing that third place attitude to life, and really sort of reinforcing that as from a brand statement, but starting from the teams that are inside. So one of the things that Howard Schultz did, bravely so, was after Katrina, and when he came back to the company, he wanted to make sure that everybody sort of got the same message at the same time, that we were reigniting the spirit of the brand. And so all 10,000 company stores in the US, all the managers flew into New Orleans and we spent a week there volunteering, and really, really sort of wiped the slate clean, because as part of the storytelling of the brand, it was really about the people who work for the company. And so that was, and that people thought it was crazy, you know, because it was a lot of money. It was millions of dollars to spend to do this, but I think it was one of the most insightful ways to actually get the brand reinvention out there. Okay, so then I moved on to a company called Escentuals, which is a little cosmetic company owned by Shiseido, and this was the storefront standard that they were doing when I started there. The product that they sell is called Bare Minerals. I had a hard time, because I'd say I work for Bare Escentuals. Oh, Bare Escentuals, E-S-S-E-N-T-I, no. So you go through the spelling with people. They say, we sell Bare Minerals. Oh, okay. So you spend half your conversation going through that. And this was the interior, very girly, very pink. The chairs were inspired by the chairs that were in the owner's house. So that's how they got that motif. And this is the way that the product was displayed. So this brand reinvention was really, once again, about bringing the spirit of the brand, which was embodied by Leslie, who was a very, very modern woman. She was one of the very, very first people who sold her products on QVC, and she was a QVC sensation, and that's really how the Bare Minerals brand became, the powerhouse that it is today. And so she is the sole breadwinner in her family. Her husband takes care of the kids, and her whole ethos is really about this whole girlfriend idea. You know, she's very approachable. She goes to all these events, and she has all these people come join her, and she'll do spot makeups on the fly, and she's just this larger-than-life personality. So, like everything else, when you do a brand reinvention, it's not just about the design of the buildings. You have to kind of go through it holistically, from an attitude, the advertising, how you actually go about things. And so we started with this Force of Beauty campaign, and these were the models that were selected for this campaign this year. So we did something really interesting. It was a blind model selection. So they had all the candidates write about themselves, and then based on the writings and some interviews behind a curtain, they interviewed the models, and then they selected. So luckily enough, this is what we ended up with after they said, you have won the campaign. And then there was a blonde, a redhead, African. It was a wonderful. And the redhead's my favorite, actually, because she's a firefighter. How does that happen? So great story. But we did it for ourselves, not necessarily as a big media blitz. We did end up storytelling about these women, but it was really, once again, about the spirit of Leslie and the whole sort of entrepreneurial attitude and these very, very powerful women. So this is a brief. I'm not going to read this, but so to modernize the whole look, we rebranded the stores to say, this is about the inside, not about the exterior. Because if you recall, the last one was much, much more of a sort of this very traditional kind of Williams-Sonoma-ish type exterior. And so this is about actually seeing as much as possible inside and really inviting people to play, because we see beauty differently. And getting that tone, that cheeky tone that is always about the way that Leslie sort of runs her meetings. She'll show up on your floor, she'll bring a boombox, everybody stop what you're doing, and you have to dance. So really getting that spirit into the stores was what we were trying to do, and really getting people to feel comfortable playing a while, and also sort of uplifting the look of the brand. So these little small touches where we actually get to communicate directly with the people who are, but not about selling something, just about saying that we believe in smiling at strangers. And then just some fun little pictures of Leslie kind of peppered in and out that you wouldn't even know if you were not familiar with her as a CEO. Okay, so coffee, cosmetics, and then candy. So it's my 3 C's. I'll end with a C somehow. I don't know. I have to figure that out with Taco Bell. Maybe cause. So I started working with a company called It's Sugar. Larry's over there in the back. It's a local company out of Deerfield Beach here. And similar to Old Navy, it's a new brand. So it's not so much about brand reinvention, but really sort of helping them kind of hone what they were saying about themselves, and really sort of creating a program that you could actually take and translate it anywhere in the world. So this is what one of the stores looked like before. Very visually busy, very crowded. Lots of things to play, but once again, very, 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 very overtly feminine. And so similar to Bare Escentuals, Bare Minerals, it's really about inviting, because it is, once again, it's a luxury brand, because you can buy candy at Walgreens. This is really about the experience, inviting you in, and that impulse. So a lot of their locations tend to be in tourist locations, and so inviting them in, inviting the outside in, and giving people license to come in and play a while. This was a proposal for a store in London, and this is one in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, in 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. Okay, so I get to where I am now. One of the things that when I was hired at Taco Bell, what the company asked me to do is, we want you to come in and we want to do what you did at Starbucks, which was very painful, very difficult, lots of gray hairs, lots of very, very late nights. And I said, are you sure? Because lots of people can say that, but you really have to have the energy to actually really start with a whole bunch of introspection in-house to understand really whether this is what you want to do. So it's a journey, and I was like, people are not going to like it. The teams that have been so successful all the years, what we're going to say is stop everything that you're doing, and then we're going to look at every single thing and see whether or not you really have the appetite to make this change. Well, a year later, I'm still here. They haven't fired me yet. And so this is a journey. I will show you. This is a work in progress. We haven't yet hit it on all cylinders. But what we've been doing is the stripping back of what we've built out there in order to now start adding it back in. So Taco Bell, as you know, Rob, we mentioned it before, it's about Glen Bell. And it's Mexican-inspired food. We don't serve Mexican food. There's nothing Mexican about a Dorito Locos Tacos. It's really about a California brand. And it's just really about our irreverence. So the picture on the left is when there was a fan who said, we really need a Taco Bell in Alaska. So we brought him a taco truck. We just helicoptered in. And then last year, we picked up the original store. There was a Save Numero Uno campaign. We picked it up because the owner of the land was demolishing it, everything. And like a lot of people in Orange County, they were making a giant condominium complex. So we picked it up, put it on a truck, and there was a whole parade at 11:30 at night where we brought this thing. It sits in our parking lot till we try to figure out what to do with it. We were thinking an Airbnb. We don't know how that's going to go. Maybe we'll be in the hotel business. And then, of course, turning Doritos into a taco shell. So the spirit of the brand is sort of this irreverent fun. And then there's all these things that are, these are not things that we made. These are fans who create these items. Then there's this. And then there's this. I will say that I do recognize this as something that's similar to when I was at Starbucks, because you get these Starbucks fanatics, you get these Taco Bell fanatics. And then you get this. So I don't know if you guys can recognize what these are. These are we found on Etsy. So the top is soap. I don't know whether it smells like tacos or not. And then the sports bra, because what woman doesn't need a Taco Bell sports bra? And then the little thing is a necklace with emergency Taco Bell things in there, I don't know. So that's the brand. It's not just about us, it's about the collective us, right? Our fans. And you guys heard about this? The guy was in a coma for weeks, and the first words out of his mouth was, "I want Taco Bell." So he now has a lifetime supply of Taco Bell, courtesy of our executive team. So it's not about food. It's not about the brand. It's not about sustainability. It's about this collective social consciousness that is about the fans, and as well as it's about the people, right? So that's a big stereotype, but it truly is true in this case. So one of the things I was excited about is I'm a San Francisco liberal, right? I don't eat fast food, you know. I don't eat nacho cheese. I'm like, how am I going to do this? You know, I'm a San Francisco liberal. I went to UC Berkeley, the People's Republic of Berkeley. Then I'm going to come and work for fast food. So here's the deal. I've learned so much about the food that we serve and how we source it. And then I've also learned a lot about American eating habits, right? So the majority of people in this country spend $18 a day on food. $9 of that is groceries. So then it's the other $9. I mean, you can go to Starbucks and spend $9 and you haven't even eaten, you know? So when you think about it that way, we have this major opportunity and responsibility from a fast food perspective to actually give people a respectful environment to actually be able to enjoy a dinner out. You can have a dinner for four and spend $20 at a Taco Bell or fast food in general. So it doesn't have to be about just commodities. It can also be about a respectful experience. So this is our history. Obviously, numero uno, and then all the way to the right, which was the latest one that they were doing when I got there. And so, once again, when you release yourself from having everything be exactly the same, you don't worry about what's in your past. You just make little migrations internally to start telling the story in a different way. Of course, it starts with your new stores, and then it starts with your remodels, and you just make little adjustments. And that's where the authenticity comes in, as far as I'm concerned. If you stay focused on what you're trying to accomplish and you migrate there. You know, when you build a house, when you move into a new house, you don't remodel everything perfect the first day. When I was going to architecture school, one of my professors said, that's why we call buildings buildings. They're never done. They keep evolving. And so it's the same approach that we have towards remodels and our new stores. So this is kind of, we were talking earlier, Kambiz was saying, oh my God, I don't know. It's the orange and the purple and the yellow, and it's just so much noise. I'll show you a little bit about our inspiration of what we're starting to do, and a couple of pictures of some remodels that we've been working on in Orange County so we can test the proof of concept. But all of these concepts starting from a brand, from the brand spirit internally. So the first one is Modern Explorer, because we consider ourselves explorers in this food journey. And I think what actually would tell you a little bit more about the inspiration for this style is some images. We did this Pinterest on steroids. We said to everybody in the department, please choose images that you feel like make some sense from who we are as a brand. And so early concept imagery of a building that we are working on building, redundant, and then some interior shots, really sort of taking away all the color that you saw in the original stores, and really sort of actually instead of the interior of the restaurant being about Taco Bell, having it be about a pleasant dining experience. So stripping back all of the color that we felt was representing the brand, and really sort of talk about the fact that people are trying to have a meal here and we don't have to yell at them in orange. So the second concept is called California Soul, and that really celebrates the fact that we are a California brand. We're not a Mexican food brand. We're not, you know, and one would argue that a lot of the naked chicken taco that's going to be coming out real soon has nothing to do with Mexican food, but it's darn good. So just a little bit about the inspiration for this concept. So we're going to try making our building smaller and spending the money on the patio in this concept. and really sort of pushing the envelope between interior and exterior. Our first building is going to be built in Spring, Texas in this style, but we did do an interior remodel recently to just sort of test the proof of concept of the furniture and the materials. And fortunately, in this particular restaurant, we already had a pretty large patio, so we were able to try some of the exterior furniture as well. The last one is actually my favorite. It's called Heritage. We had a heritage concept when I was at Starbucks, which was really about Pike's Place Market. So this one was about numero uno. The very, very first restaurant that Glenn Bell built was what we call the Mission style. And it was a walk-up and an outdoor dining only with a little patio. And just for the authenticity in quotes, about the fact that we were selling tacos, he would hire mariachi bands on weekends and have chickens running around in the parking lot. We're not going to do that. We're all grown up now. And so the way I describe this one is a little less Tijuana and a little more Santa Barbara. So Carlos Azalde, who's our director of store design, he says to me, because I picked the music for these videos, he goes, "Why did you choose an Argentinian tango? That has nothing to do with Mexican." I'm like, "You think what we do has something to do with Mexican?" So this is the photos of the remodel that we just recently completed, and just a couple of the shots of the interior environment. And then the last one really addresses our foray into the urban environment. We are a California brand for the most part. We grew up in the suburbs, freestanding drive-thrus with 70% of our business coming from the drive-thru. But we are making a foray into the urban, obviously internationally you can't avoid that, but we opened an inline store recently in Chicago, which I'll show you some pictures of. And so this started off as a purely inline concept, but we do end up in some environments that, shall I say, are a little more gritty. Style is we actually did one of the remodels in this style, and touring the franchisees through it was interesting, or some of the leadership of the franchisees, because you see the bare bulbs. They were wondering, when are the contractors going to come back and finish it? It's already finished. You see I highlighted a little strip of some reclaimed wood that we incorporated. We can't afford to do all reclaimed wood. It's very expensive, and I wanted to storytell with it. So it had to be someplace local that we got, which everybody freaked out about because you can't use that wood in other places in the world, and we'll find different wood. So once again, it's about a different way to actually approach doing things. So I talked a little bit about Cantina. So just a few images from our restaurant in Chicago. As you guys know, Mexican food, I don't know why it took us so long to figure this out, but it goes very well with beer and sangria. And so this is one of, I think we're opening 10 this year. One in San Francisco. And then the mother of all cantinas in Vegas, which is a 2-story space that we're working on, should open by the end of October, maybe early November, during Halloween. And it'll have the full expression of everything that we're testing. So you see merchandise, these sort of frutista machines on steroids, and the upstairs, which we affectionately call the lounge and the chapel. I'll let you find out what that's all about later. And then in our freestanding buildings, we are storytelling about some of the work that we're doing from a sustainability perspective. So one of the things that I wanted the team to do is I wanted to grow only edibles in the whole entire restaurant. Usually they sort of say, "Okay, can you go back in your office now, you crazy person?" But we are sort of introducing, obviously, drought-tolerant plants. We're collecting rainwater. We're trying to collect the water from the HVAC units and bring that down on the exterior of the building and water the plants with it in the drive-through lane. So we can talk about that a little bit more. By the way, it's a lot of water. And really, we just finished installing, I don't have a picture yet because it just happened last week, a solar panel, drive-through panel. So when you drive through and you look up, it's really a solar panel. It's actually running itself so that the OCB, the order confirmation board, and the menu can be all run from the solar panel that's actually part of the protection. So last but not least, this is great. It's just stripping back all the stuff that was there before and really just providing a very kind of simple dining environment. But really the next phase of this is really when we bring all those crazy, wacky stories back to life in the restaurant. So the layering back of the things that make the brand authentic and different. So one of the things we're doing is Feed the Beat is the musicians that we support from a no strings attached tour gift card perspective. We play their music in the stores now, so we're going to be talking about that a little bit more and actually really introducing them as part of the Taco Bell family. And then, I don't know if you guys have heard about the program that we do with scholarships. So we support what the kids are that we call the other ones, the ones that didn't win a sports scholarship, that didn't win an academic scholarship, but potentially have great things to actually share with society. So we have this huge scholarship program, and we also have that open to the people who work in the restaurants, called the Live Mas Scholarship. So we're going to be working on bringing all of that back into the restaurant. With that, I think I have a few minutes to open it up for some questions.
Thank you, Deborah. So with the different concepts that you showed us there, how do you guys handle all the customer touch points, like the plating, the uniforms? Is there a common thread there? Or?
Yeah, so the uniforms, working with our marketing team, they're also putting forth variety. To actually be able to introduce, and they don't necessarily have to be connected to the building, introduce a whole bunch of, it's a great way for expression. The plating we're really reserving mostly at this point for Cantina because it's shareables, and obviously people aren't bringing beer out the door, they're staying and hanging out for a while. And so far that's the only one where we're really sort of testing that idea. Once again, most of our buildings, it's really, a huge majority of the business goes through the drive-through. So we'll see how much this expression in the dining room expands the dine-in concept, and then we may test further there.
How are the franchisees adapting to the new design?
I will say that the franchisees are not one group. There are many disparate voices. And so we have some extremes that are in the it's about time camp and when can I order my first store's worth. And then there are some that are more about why are we changing again and why 4 concepts? Who's going to know that it's a Taco Bell if it looks like this? Well, you saw in our history in the very beginning that there is no one Taco Bell out there. And so part of it is really sort of educating them that it's okay for it to be a bit of a discovery, because it's not like we're going to go back and change all the existing ones anyway. We're going to migrate there, and we're going to do it together as a community, not just the brand. And there's like any other big organization, there's early adopters, and then there's some that don't trust that liberal from San Francisco.
Were you able to keep cost consistent across the board?
Yeah. So what you didn't see, the question, if you guys didn't hear it, was will you keep cost consistent across the board? We are going to start with we're taking this from the car industry, although I know this is actually scary to say that, right? Because there's a lot of things that we don't want to take from the car industry. But if you think about when you buy a car, you sort of pick your color, and then you pick the interior, and then you lux up with the stereo and that and the other thing, and then at the end of the day, you can end up with the supercharged lux up model or the basic model. So we're taking that same application, and then we're also working on a lot of things that do double duty, so transformation pieces, so that you can swap out the seat from the padded seat to a wooden seat without actually changing the whole bench. We worked very closely for this design with our fabricator. Is IDX here?
Yeah.
All right. There's your ad pitch for the day.
Thanks.
So because we knew that it was going to be important to be able to transform and to be opportunistic. If you see a small run of some fabulous material, you want to be able to use it without changing out the whole program. So that's what a lot of the heavy lifting was. And then from a sourcing perspective, it just also made it easier to maintain, easier to replace, so that you could be opportunistic, have the program go worldwide without all of it being completely matchy-matchy, for lack of a better term.
Deborah, the question I have is, I know the experience and the effort with Taco Bell intimately, but with your other experiences that you shared, did you ever engage a design firm to assist in the development, or did you mainly take the approach that you would do it in-house?
We engage with many firms, many manufacturers, but the concepts were always in-house. The initial concept and that was very purposeful. I mean, it's really kind of the whole point of the presentation is you have to change hearts and minds internally first, because you're never going to be able to execute it if the people who are actually doing it on a day-to-day basis don't get what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Because it's always easy to bring in a very, very talented firm, pay them a pile of money and say, we don't want this anymore, give them a one-page brief and say, what have you got? But the challenge is making that stick. And part of the thing that I'm most proud of with Starbucks, and Kambiz can probably attest to this, is those concepts that we put in place when we were there are still living today. Because you know how it is, you bring in the new person, and then all of a sudden, okay, this is now the store, the store of the future. You want it to be really something inherently that you bred from in-house. So, no offense to any of the branding firms that are here. Any other questions? I think I'm zeroed out. So.
Yeah, we got time for one more.
Sorry. So again, Taco Bell being mainly drive-through, did you guys do anything differently with the drive-through as well?
Yeah, so that's what we're doing now with the freestanding buildings. We're testing some drive-through concepts. It's a little longer. We purposefully split our tests into two so that we could get some things out of the gate and people could feel the rewards from their labor a little faster. And then we'll tackle the site work and the drive-through expression in the freestanding buildings that we have coming up. All right, thank you so much for listening.